Hi, I'm Michael Ross. Thank you for joining me for a Clearview video series. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to get over the hump of negative self-image in your life. Wherever you're at, let me tell you right now, there's hope. There's a way out. There's a future for you that is going to be unprecedented. I promise you this, that you are a masterpiece. And the things that you have to offer the world, nobody else can. So it is so important that you overcome negative self-image in your life. And we've got to start with your story. So my story is this. 19 years ago, I was on a jail cell floor. I was broken. I was hopeless. I was suicidal. The only thing I could think about during my time in jail was killing myself. And I had almost killed myself a few years before that. I was on my back porch and I had a gun between my legs and I was ready to pull the trigger. I grabbed it a couple times and I was working up the courage to pull the trigger, and somebody showed up at my house and saw me sitting there. And it kind of shocked me at the time of how dark I had become and how much of an internal prison I was in. You know, going to jail wasn't really a culmination of a lot of bad deeds. It was a culmination of how I felt about myself. So on that jail cell floor, I really was ready to follow through now and actually pull the trigger and to end my life, because I thought I was a piece of garbage. I thought I was no good. I thought my ship had sailed in this life and I needed to move on because I had torn down so many relationships. I'd torn down so many opportunities. I had squandered everything in my power. At that point in my life, I'd squandered everything. But 3 people came into my life subsequently that helped turn it all around. And the first one was a guy named Judge Williamson. Judge Williamson was the judge who had the power to put me away for 6 months to 2 years, or he had the power to let me go. And I remember the day I was in a holding tank with 15 other guys, and all these guys are talking in this holding tank about, you know, they're going to prison with their dads and they're almost proud of it in this life of crime. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? How did I end up in this place? And I'm talking to these guys, I'm having a conversation with them, and I realized something while I was there in that holding tank. There's a lot of good dudes, a lot of good people, just misguided, misdirected, and don't see a lot of value in themselves. So a life of crime is what they chose because they did not see value in themselves. Same as me, I thought I was a worthless pile of junk. And so when you feel like you're a worthless pile of junk, you do what a worthless pile of junk does. And I committed crimes and I got convicted as a felon. And so I was waiting to go before this judge, and I go before the judge, Judge Williamson, and he's a bigger guy and he had bushy hair, bushy eyebrows, and he had these half-moon spectacles on. And I walk in there and I walk in there with an attitude because, you know, the way I was back then, I thought the police and the justice system was nothing more than a bunch of, you know, Babylons, you know, guys that, you know, try to get one over on you and control you. And so I had an attitude towards anybody in authority. So I walk up to Judge Williamson and I look at him with this look of disdain. You know, I'm staring at him. And he, with compassion in his eyes, he looks over his half-moon spectacles and he says, "Son, this is your first major offense." He said, "I'm going to drop this to a misdemeanor." And he had complete compassion. And he looks over and he says, "But I want to tell you something." He says, "I have seen that look that you're looking at me with 1,000 times. Because I promise you, if you don't change that look, you're going to end up back in here a long time. So I suggest you go into a service organization or the military, or I'm going to see you again." And that shocked me. Honestly, I'd never thought of service to other people as a way to get out of trouble, or, you know, as a way to get out of this own internal prison, or even a way as to stay out of prison. So I heeded his words. I thought about it, but I went back to my environment, went back to my life, you know, where all the other people who were committing crimes and doing negative things were, and that's the environment I lived in. So I go back and I start getting into trouble again, start getting into the same old lifestyle, getting into the same old things. And I remember the one day I went to work. I had this kind of cover job to cover up the way I was really making money, which was slang and drugs. And I went into work the one day, and my boss and I got into an altercation, and I lost my mind in front of everybody. And I knocked all the stuff off his desk, and I went after him, and I remember feeling like I was completely out of control. I had no control anymore. That this area that he hit my self-worth again, which I'd already felt like I was a worthless pile of junk. And he hit me on the inside in that spot, that sensitive spot, and I lost it. And I felt completely out of control. And I thought, I got to do something, because I may do something like kill somebody if I don't get this under control. So I was headed to the bank to cash my last check. And I go to the bank, and while I'm at the bank, there was a military recruiter station that was adjacent to the bank. So I'm walking into the bank, and while I'm there, the military recruiter's out, he's smoking a cigarette, and he says, "Hey man, come over here and talk to me." I said, "Dude, you don't want nothing to do with me, man. I'm not the dude you want to talk to." And he says, "No, just come over." And he goes, "You smoke?" And I smoked at the time. He said, "Come over and have a cigarette with me." So I go out of the bank, and I go out, and he hands me a cigarette, and I start smoking. He says, "So is your life where you want it to be right now?" I said, "Whoa, that's a big question." I said, "No, man, it isn't. It isn't where I want it to be." And he says, "Well, what are you going to do to change that?" I said, "I don't know." And so I talked to him for 2 straight hours, and he went through what the military offered and how that could provide some structure for me and help me find what it is I really want to do with my life. And so I said, "All right, when can I leave?" And so he said, "Well, how soon do you want to leave?" I said, I'd leave today if I could, man. I want to get out of here. And so he had to have me get cleaned up a little bit, on the inside, so I could go to boot camp and pass the drug test. And so I ended up, leaving shortly after that, and I was on a plane to boot camp, and I get to boot camp, and the problem was, even though I was going to a new environment, new location, I internally was still the same person. I still thought I was a worthless pile of junk. I had nothing to offer the world. And so I went into that situation with my own internal issues, and I brought that to boot camp. Well, the 3rd day of boot camp, a guy calls me a name. And again, it hit that sensitive spot. And when it hit that sensitive spot, I lost my mind. I absolutely lost control again. And I go over and I punched him. And then I punched him again, and I punched him again, and I punched him again. And I finally came out of the frenzy, and there were 40 guys around me, grabbing me and pulling me off of him. And I came back to reality, and I realized what I had done. I knew I was in some big trouble. I ended up in the division officer's office, and this was an old school, hard-nosed military lady. She had no time or energy to waste on me. And so she looks at me and she says, "We don't have time for people like you. We are going to kick you out. And so I'm going to send you underneath the ladder well," which is just a fancy word for stairs in the military. And so she says, "We're going to send you underneath the ladder well, and we're going to process you out." So I knew I was getting kicked out. I didn't know if I was going to get court-martialed. I didn't know if I was going to go away to another prison for a very long time. But I didn't know it at the time. But when you punch somebody in the military, you're punching government property. They do not take kindly to that. So I'm standing underneath the ladder well. Okay, so imagine standing for 16 hours in a day. It was the worst punishment I've ever had in my life. It is, as far as maddening in punishment, it's the worst, okay? So I'm standing there, and either at attention, at parade rest, or at ease all day. And they'd bring me these box breakfast, lunch, and dinners. And I had to stand there and eat, and my legs were tired, but I had all day to think. And as I was standing there thinking, it was going back to suicide. And at this point in time, I was absolutely 100% gonna follow through with suicide. And I had made up my mind. It was over. And if you've ever made your mind up for something, you know how that feeling is. And that's where I was. I was just like done with life in general. And I knew, hey, I can't even make it here. Am I going to end up back in prison? I knew the way I was and the way I felt about myself. I knew if I got out, I was going to go back to my old life, and it was going to be more of the same. And I was going to either end up in prison or dead anyway, so I might as well follow through with it. So the funniest thing happened, though, when I made that decision, I was absolutely going to follow through with this. I started feeling this sense of gratitude, which is really weird. So I felt this sense of gratitude for my family, for my parents. And, you know, I knew my parents tried their best with me. They did the best that they possibly could. And I had made a lot of bad choices, but I did the absolute best I could. And I knew they loved me, but I just figured, again, I thought I was a pile of trash. I thought, hey, they did the best they could, but I'm just a bad seed. You know, it's nothing to do with them. It all has to do with me. I'm a bad seed. I'm a bad apple. You know, I came out spoiled. What can I say? And I started being grateful for coaches in my life and teachers in my life who tried their best with me. And it was a weird spot I was in. I was feeling grateful because I knew it was the end of my life. Well, I'm standing there, and it was at the end of the day near taps, and taps is when they turn off the lights and make you go to sleep. I hear these big, I knew they were big footsteps coming down the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. Guy comes around the corner. It was a guy named Petty Officer Tabbert. Tabbert was this big, burly sailor guy, and he was, you know, if you picture Popeye with a bunch of chest hair and, you know, bushy eyebrows and glasses, and he was just this big, burly guy with forearms, you know, the size of big old baseball bats or softball bats, or, you know, he comes down, he's looking at me, and he says, oh, so you're the guy who likes to fight, huh? I got guys in my division that like to fight. Come with me. So I start following him. I'm going up the stairs. My legs were tired. I'm walking up the stairs. And I said, I didn't want to talk, but I did anyways. I said, Petty Officer Tabbert. I said, I don't understand. You know, division officer said they were going to kick me out. You know, what's the deal? He says, well, I don't know who's looking down on you, Ross, but you're getting a second chance. You're coming to my division. So we go into his division. I go all the way to the end of the barracks. And at the end of the barracks were one open rack. And so there was a guy on my right and then about 80 guys to my left. And they're standing at attention before taps. And they said, and Petty Officer Tabbert says, hey, we got a new guy who likes to fight in our division. He said, so you guys can welcome him tomorrow. And so they would have you stand there, and a lot of boot camp is standing and learning discipline on how to do what's called a 1,000-yard stare. So everyone's standing there. And so I look over, I waited for him to leave, and I said, none of you look at me, none of you talk to me, and if you get close to me and you start talking to me a lot, you're gonna get these hands. And so I was wanting everyone to leave me alone. And for the most part, everybody did, but there was one guy in the division, his name was Zayden. And Zayden was a type of guy, he walks into a room and this guy just lights up the room. The energy changed every time this guy walked in the room. And when he left the room, the energy went down a little bit. You know, he's just that guy. Comes in, he makes you feel great, and then he leaves. And you don't feel as great. So we've all had people like that in our lives. And for some reason, Zayden just picked me out of everybody else to be an encourager to. And he would say the weirdest things to me. And he'd come up to me as one of the leaders in our division. He'd come up to me and go, Ross, man, I see greatness in you. I see greatness in you. You're the type of guy that could really make a difference in our division and life. He's like, dude, I see something special in you. I'm like, gosh, okay, man, thank you. Now, I couldn't, when he would say those things, it would hit me on the inside and almost cause a little bit of pain. Because there was this deep part of me that wanted to believe what he said, really wanted to believe what he said, but I couldn't because of how many years I had spent beating myself down. So he would say things like that, and I wanted to believe him. He kept it up, and he would say things like, you're a masterpiece, man. I'm telling you, you're going to shine. You're going to really make a difference in the world one day. And he would say these things day in and day out. And anytime I needed help with something, he was the first one to help me out. And anytime I would get in trouble for something, not folding my clothes right or doing a proper push-up or whatever it is, he would get my back. And one night I was on watch, and I had the midnight watch, and so did he. So we were both on opposite sides of the barracks, and then we'd have to cross and pass each other. So we're crossing paths. And so he and I just started a conversation. He says, so Ross, tell me your story now. What's up? And the way he asked, you know, made me feel very vulnerable, but at the same time, gave me courage in the way he asked the question. And I thought, I'm gonna tell him my story. And so I start telling him my story about how I got here. And most of my story was about blaming others. You know, if it wasn't for this person and that person, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't think the way I think. This person said this to me when I was a kid, and this person beat me down, and I had this person, you know, call me names, and this other teacher, call me stupid, whatever else. So I go through this story with him. He didn't judge me. He didn't put me down. He didn't say anything. He says, man, the way you shared that story was so compelling. He goes, if you can get over this, if you can come through this, he goes, that story is going to be used to help a lot of people one day. Because I'm telling you. And it was crazy. He didn't try to fix me. And, I'd been used to that. When I tell a story, somebody try to fix you, they try to come in and, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to do this. You've had people like that in your life, right? There's probably 20 of them right now. You can't say anything without somebody trying to fix you. You don't want to be fixed. You just want to be appreciated. You want to be loved, just like I did. And so I heard him say that and something sparked in me. It was like this major change sparked in me. So I had Judge Williamson hit me with the service. I had Zayden hit me with that. And then the third person was a petty officer named Petty Officer Skinner. So a couple days later, I've got this welling up inside of me where I'm starting to feel like, oh my gosh, I could maybe make a difference. And I'm wanting to believe what Zayden says, but I still got this self-talk that's beating me down and telling me I'm a worthless pile of crap. And, and so the one day we're standing at attention. And what they do in boot camp is kind of scary, but kind of cool, is they wanted you to memorize the codes of the UCMJ. They wanted to memorize codes of ethics so that you could be in use and service to others. So what happened was Petty Officer Skinner was walking through the division, and what they'd do is they'd stop at random people and ask, tell me Article 8 of the UCMJ. And you'd have to say it. If you missed one word, if you misspoke, if you stuttered, they would say, drop. And everybody would have to do push-ups. You'd have to do jumping jacks. Everybody had to do something, okay? So nobody wanted to be the one that messed it up because everyone would look at you like, dude, come on, man. So he's walking up. He's getting closer to me. I'm like, oh, no, don't ask me. Don't ask me. So I'm like going through the UCMJ articles in my mind and the code of ethics. I'm starting to think through it. I'm like, don't pick me, please. Don't pick me in my mind. He comes up and he just looks at me. Didn't say a word, just staring at me. And he finally speaks. He says, Ross, I've been watching you. You're a real punk, you know that? And he gets a little bit closer. He goes, I want you to look at your shirt. So I looked at my shirt. He says, look at your pants. I looked at my pants. He said, look at your boots. I looked at my boots. He said, now look to the man on your left. And I looked. He said, look to the man on your right. And I looked. And he got right in my face. He got right up to my face. I could feel his hot breath all over me. And he said, they got the same shirt, pants, boots, and haircut as you. You're not special. What makes you special is what you do for that man on your left and that man on your right. He just stood back up, got back, he walked away. And it was, for me, the most sweeping thing in the world. I'd spent my entire life trying to make myself happy, trying to convince myself that I had value, trying to convince myself that once I get this, or once I get that, or once I have this, or once I have that, or once this person cares about me, or once I have this relationship where I feel valued, then I'll be okay, then I'll be better, then I'll have a positive self-image, then I'll be able to impact the world. But I had it all wrong. I had the power right then, and Petty Officer Skinner helped me realize that. Helped me see that my value really wasn't about me. It wasn't me trying to work it up. I already had it. He said it's what you do in service to others that really makes the biggest difference. And so I made a decision that day. I said, I spent the first 19 years of my life, trying to make myself feel good, trying to convince myself that I'm worth something. Now, what I'm going to do is spend the rest of my life serving others and helping them see that they're worth something. And in that, I know I'm going to feel satisfied. And absolutely, unequivocally, 100%, I was right. So for the last 19 years, I've been serving and doing everything in my power to help other people live fulfilled and impactful lives. And that's where life completely turned upside down. That's how I went from prison to now partner in a top 50 firm, is I started to serve other people. Now, the importance of telling my story is not to tell you how great I am. It's to ask you, what's your story? What is your story? How did you get to where you're at right now? You downloaded these videos because you've got a story. You've come to this point because of many things that have happened to you. One thing I don't want you to do. Many people do this, and I want you to really pay attention to this, please, is do not mitigate your own trauma. Don't think that your story is not important. A lot of people, they mitigate or they act like their own trauma is not that important. That, oh, well, a lot of people have had it worse than me. That's all relative. How can you say that somebody who is starving in a third world country has worse plight or has a worse life than somebody here who's in an internal prison, who has everything but has nothing on the inside, that feels worthless? How can you say that one person has it worse than the other? So I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do is I want you to map out your story. Take a journal, download this manuscript from this, read it over, and then I want you to write your own story. I want you to write it out. I want you to put it on video. I want you to record it. Send it to me, please. mross@hbkln.com. Send it to me. I want to hear your story because your story is important. If you're going to have a positive self-image, you cannot separate your history from your destiny. You've got to say, this is how I got to where I'm at right now, to where I'm not feeling as confident. I'm not feeling as sure. I'm not feeling like I can do it. I'm constantly questioning and beating myself down. I can't get rid of these voices in my head that constantly beat me down. I can make progress, but then as I make progress, something comes and keeps me from getting there. Another roadblock comes, and I don't know how to get out of it. You've got to map out, how did you get here? I do that in the book. So if you look at the first chapter, I tell you my story in a little more detail. I tell you how specific things, specific words that came in my mind that beat me down. The 3 words for me were fat, ugly, and stupid. I used to say I was fat, ugly, and stupid all the time. I'd look in the mirror and I'd go, man, you're so fat, you're so ugly, you're so dumb. You know, and I couldn't do well in school because that was constantly, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. And when you say you're stupid over and over again, Forrest Gump said it, stupid is as stupid does. But you've got to first turn up the volume on your own story. Share your story. How'd you get to this point? How'd you get here? So your homework before you go to lesson 2 is write your own story. Share it on a video. Put it on audio. Because I promise you this, just as Zayden promised to me, and boy was he right. Because your story one day is going to make a huge difference in somebody else's life. And as you go through these modules, as you go through the steps and the iterations of how to overcome a negative self-image, how to overcome those words, you can't, you're not good enough. You don't have what it takes. Those words that are constantly swirling around us, as you overcome that, your story is going to be used to unlock the potential in others. What a great opportunity. So write your story, and I'll talk to you in the next lesson.